the minutes from February 18th.
We'll make the motion.
Second.
Moving to second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And next we have a new public hearing for 5 Manley Street. While you're setting up, I'll just read it into the record. Under the West Bridgewater Comprehensive Stormwater Management Regulations, the West Bridgewater Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on the 3rd of March 2020 in the McBrown Donald Conference Room, 65 North Main Street, for a general stormwater management permit requested by James Rader for his project at 5 Manley Street. And we're open.
Okay, good evening, Don Bracken from Bracken Engineering. I don't think there's been any turnover in the 2.5 years since this project was originally approved, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Again, as you know, we have an order of conditions already for the project. I'll review it for you. I had to review it again myself this morning.
Has it been 2.5 years?
It's been,
Get
yeah,
out.
actually,
Wow.
in
Huh?
September of 2017. So.
God.
Time flies.
Yes. So there is interest now in starting the project. The owner has had some contractors looking at it, and have been answering a lot of questions and so forth. So we knew we had to come back for this permit at some time. So here we are. I think when we went through the initial review, we included a lot of information on erosion and control. We had a stormwater pollution prevention plan submitted originally. The order of conditions included many requirements, such as having I think an erosion control specialist on the site, having to file reports and so forth, which obviously will take place. To refresh your memory, this is a 34.5 acre site on the east side of Manley Street. We have a bordering vegetated wetland to the north and to the west. We did have a small pocket of isolated wetland kind of in the middle of the site. There's already an existing building at the front of the site with a roadway that was intended to be extended sometime in the future. If you recall, the existing site is mostly disturbed. There are some patches of woods here and there. It's been used for bike paths and racing and so forth. We were at the site. I was there with John, and we did several test pits, and we were there with the Board of Health previously, and did test pits for that. All that soil information is included in the plans. The project calls for constructing a proposed building, mainly warehouse. The total area is 73,800 square feet with parking. Because of the high groundwater, if you recall, we ended up for the drainage system constructing a wetland area as the primary system, and then toward the back where the elevation was a little bit higher, we had some stilling basins that overflowed into the wetland, but most of the treatment is done subsurface, going through the drainage system, especially all the roof areas. The site does have to get raised a pretty fair amount, maybe 3 or 4 feet overall in the building area, so there will be a lot of material brought in. The plans depict the erosion control measures that are proposed. A lot more verbiage in the plans and in the report that we originally submitted. In total, there's about 7 acres of disturbance in total. Not including the front building, there's about 5 acres of impervious area proposed for the project, just to give you kind of a scope of what we're talking about. It's indicated in the notes on the plan that these stilling basins and the wetland basin during construction and filling and compaction, they're going to be temporary drainage basins that are going to be excavated within a foot of what the final grade is. So when they're getting ready to build it, they'll take out the sediments that are in there and get down and clean out that last foot and vegetate and build the basins from there. Otherwise, there aren't many steep slopes. It's fairly level, and I think most of the runoff can be controlled as the site is progressing. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
John, did you have anything?
No, this is pretty much a duplication of what we went through for the order of conditions, and we just need to catch up with a stormwater permit because it wasn't a public hearing for that originally. It was just for the order of conditions.
So the management plan was already in place?
Right.
Anybody else in the audience, questions, comments?
No.
Hearing none, then I will entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll entertain a motion to issue a general stormwater management permit.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you. If I could steal a few minutes of your time,
Yep.
just to talk about the next phase of the project, if I might, to
Sure.
get some feedback, if that's okay. Jim Rady, the owner, is also here. The front building, we'd like to put an addition on in the back, but we need additional parking. And I don't know if you remember, but as I mentioned, we have this isolated wetland area that we were given waivers for the 50-foot no-touch zone, I think because of the size, and it's not a state-regulated wetland, it's a local regulated wetland. We've been looking at some preliminary plans, but what we would like to do is perhaps come back and work closer to that wetland if it's possible, or maybe replicate the wetland either in the same general location or someplace else on the site. The proposed addition would go off the back of the building. We anticipated, additional parking. That's why we actually proposed this parking on the original plan that we just got proposed. But we did anticipate an addition that would require even more parking than that. So I don't know if that's something that the commission has done in the past or is willing to entertain for a project like this.
So we need an addition to the,
Yeah, there'll be an addition off the back of the building.
so what do you need the addition for?
Just more space.
More space. Jim can probably explain who's there and why they need the space.
We have a tenant now in the building who's doing really well, and they need more space. So if we can't expand the building, we're gonna lose them. So we'd like to keep them.
Of course.
And they actually were double in size.
What do they do?
They're in medical training. They train paramedics and
Oh, that's
EMTs
right,
all over
yeah.
the world.
Used to be cancer.
Pardon me?
Was it the cancer?
Research.
Well, it used to be
Used to be long.
American Cancer.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
about 5 years ago, we secured this medical training operation, and it was basically a startup. And
Done well.
they're doing really well.
Yeah.
So they came to us and said, hey, we need to double in size. Can you do anything to help us? And
So that would be a separate filing?
Yes,
Okay.
they'd have to come back.
Yeah, we could do a separate, or we could modify this current filing.
Amend, you mean?
Amend the filing. We are gonna have to ask for an extension because this current order is gonna expire in September. So it would be kind of a new, fresh look at the whole project, I think. Or we could refile and start the clock over again, including that work. I think
Well, I'd recommend sending in a request to extend the original order of conditions,
yes.
and then possibly we could entertain amending that order of conditions if they can satisfy the commission on what they want to do. You could approve it or you wouldn't approve it. But before we get there, are there other areas on this property that that small isolated wetland could be replicated?
I think we could, this is probably, we're already doing some mitigation
Yeah.
for the buffer zone in this area, and this would be an ideal place to actually do a wetland replication rather than just mitigate the buffer zone.
So maybe we could, are there other areas that the buffer could be enhanced to, like you were doing up there in the upper part of that sheet?
Yes, I'm sure there could be other areas that right now probably don't have very much vegetation that could be enhanced.
So what I'm thinking is that if he does use that, let's say that triangular area up there as a replication of the isolated it's basically a little kettle hole.
Yeah.
If he does something up there, and for what we lose in a buffer area, we have them put somewhere else around the perimeter of the lot, we probably would benefit, because quite frankly, that kettle hole is really nothing. I mean, it's got a couple of wetland plants in it.
You mean down the bottom?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
one, and it
How
was,
big is it? How big is that spot?
so,
Just out,
This right,
yeah.
500 square, 600 square feet, something like that.
Not too
So-
big.
Yeah.
yeah, it's just the bottom of where they probably did some gravel removal at one time, and they got a little low, and it really isn't accomplishing much, and we could really get a good one, and we wouldn't do one for one, we'd want something extra.
Looks like
Oh, yeah.
there's plenty of
That would-
space to
yeah.
do something.
And we'd
Yeah.
want more than 1-to-1. We'd want, I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, a ratio maybe 3-to-1 or something like that. A sizable resource area created out there to compensate for this.
Sure.
And then look at all that area that it opens up for parking for that front building.
Yes. No, I wouldn't have any problem.
Yeah.
It's good to get
So
that
that's
spot.
Well,
at
I
least some
appreciate that.
preliminary thoughts.
Area to work.
That's good to know the train of thought on that, so that's great. I appreciate the input too.
Some people don't have that extra space.
Yeah.
It's a good thing
Right,
they got it.
well, there's a lot of space going that way, but.
And I think if the job is done right in replicate or creating an isolated area out there, or even if we make it border, I think it'd be beneficial to the environment more than this little thing is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, of course, I'd be wondering, but I kind of like said, whoa, it's not really much of anything, but it does really,
May look better if, finished
Yeah.
over.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate it, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's do that. An extension of this,
So it needs to be
Order
extended, and then a new proposal could be used as an amendment, and I think we have a fee
Mhm,
for amending,
mhm.
so I'm not sure what it is, but you can check with us, and I can tell you what that fee would be, but
Okay.
it's not as, I don't believe it is as much, it might be as much as the original filing,
All right, well, we'll see.
but it means you don't have to go through all the other stuff.
Right. I mean, what we'll do is we'll work something out, and I'll send it to you, a preliminary plan, just to make sure we're on the same page. All right?
Good. Excellent.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Great. Next, we have 436 West Street for a continued public hearing.
So we continued the public hearing for 436 West Street, ANRAD, because at the last meeting, Azu indicated which line he wanted us to define or to approve. And there was a lot of flagging out there, and so knowing what he wanted us to approve, which I marked up, read on one of the drawing sets for tonight's documents as the riverbank, and
It's the first one.
blue for the bordering vegetated wetland.
Arrow.
That one. No, not that one.
This one here.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So when you see that drawing, you'll see the red line, which is the riverbank, the blue line, which is the bordering vegetated wetland, and the green crosshatch area
Yep.
is the area outside the 50-foot buffer. And since it would be new, they're talking about putting some additional parking.
This is the little spot.
You might be able to put the boss's car there, and that's about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
So I don't get it, but that's up to them.
yeah. I remember, yeah.
Yeah, just have a little spot, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, because even if they were to try to square that out or make the line straight, they don't have any place to really replicate
Yeah.
on the property, so
Yeah.
So, it does need a slight fee adjustment because there's more linear feet of wetland and riverbank than what they had sent in a check for. So I've cleared that up with them, and they know what that amount is. And I wouldn't release the
Straighten this out.
ORAD, the final
Who's this?
determination
To
by the
make this
commission
wider.
until we get that check. So it's about
What are you gonna gain?
$600 more roughly.
Okay.
So they're aware of that, and so at this point, I don't have any issue with it, and I would recommend closing the hearing and issuing an ORAD just for those flag numbers that you see highlighted, and not the rest of them.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Moving to second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And I will entertain a motion to issue an ORAD for the highlighted flags on John's plan.
Make that motion.
Okay, motion?
Yeah, I'll make that.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Who did?
Lee made the
Okay.
motion, Mo seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, next we have, under other administrative discussion, I assume Vitz Way?
Make sure you sign in, Scott.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
Just for the record, my name's Scott Rogers, J.K. Holmgren Engineering. So I'm sure you remember this project from years ago at this point, I guess. So they have constructed about 2/3 of the project. We're asking for a small change to the area in the front basins which run along Vitz Way. Currently, it slopes down from the parking lot to a basin, and there's a berm between the basin itself and the actual roadway. The applicant would like to modify that berm, remove the berm, and basically install retaining walls. Those would be about 3.9 feet in height, and those would be placed basically in between the slopes, so you don't lose any volume in those basins at all.
So it's mostly aesthetic, you think?
It's aesthetic, but it allows them to get, there's gonna be a lot of trucks coming in here with car carriers to get vehicles onto this site. You know, it's a big parking lot, and it's not a super wide roadway, so that'll allow them to pave a little bit more and get some more
Gotcha.
room in there.
So basically, if you could show the commission on the originally approved plan, that sheet's fine. The wall would pretty much go along where the dark line is closest to the street.
And you'd pave up to that?
So the wall will basically go like halfway between, the dark line that John's indicating is sort of the bottom of the slope, if you will. And then there's the berm, kind of right here where my pen is, and then there's a slope down towards the street. So the wall would be here, there'd be the basin, and then we'd pave up to the wall, basically.
So probably is adding, what, 5-6 feet of pavement on that side,
Give or take,
roughly?
yeah.
And they do have a lot of traffic going in and out of there.
Right.
I went in to do an inspection, and they have a kiosk there with a gate. And the young lady jumps out, and she marks on my windshield the number that they must have had cars coming in that day. And I go, wait, I'm not returning
You're not
cars.
returning one?
I'm doing an inspection. She says, oh, okay.
Can you lease cars over there? Or is it just a
I
central?
don't think they lease them there. I think
It's
they
not-
just,
Yeah.
Distribution
I
center.
Because I had to get a car a while back, and I wondered if I could go over
I think they
there.
rotate them.
Yeah, that's just to go in and out.
Yeah.
opposite in the front,
I know
maybe?
you can rent vans out here, but I don't know about
You can,
cars. Yeah.
okay,
And of course, it's down on South Main Street
yes.
in Brockton.
So, basically, it's gonna be the same thing. It just, it's gonna be a little bit more engineering because they have to do a structural wall to be able to
Right.
hold that kind of water behind it. And so, I don't see any net change in what we had originally approved, and it does benefit the project, so I'd recommend approving it as a minor project change.
Okay.
I'll
We'll
entertain
make
a
a
motion to approve this minor project change.
Yes.
Second.
Moved and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you.
Thanks.
Those are just notes for continued public hearings.
When's Scotland next time?
So, a couple of other things under other that I'd like to just let the commission know. The West Bridgewater Community Preservation Committee will be entertaining an application to do some engineering studies on the Skim Milk Bridge to see what it's going to take to put it back to at least somewhat of its historic original condition.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also would like to petition the government to make this a national historic landmark. And so they're going to be sending some paperwork on that whole thing to us, but it wasn't available for this evening. But they would like a consensus of the commission that the commission thinks this is a good project for the town to pursue. And if for some reason this paperwork comes in and it's really a lot different than what I just said, I'll be sending it out to you so you can check. Then we can always go back on what we've talked about tonight and at our next meeting change that if it's necessary. But I don't believe that there's anything different.
Good idea.
No, I think it's worthwhile to,
So
once they have something formal, we can actually take a motion and endorse it.
Yeah.
Once it comes
They're
up.
meeting, the Community Preservation Committee's meeting on the 10th, next Wednesday, to discuss it. And they just needed to have some indication that the commission was on board, so we won't be meeting until the 17th, which will be after that meeting. And so if I see anything different, I'll send it out to you anyway, but if I see anything different, I'll alert them that, wait a minute, things are different than what you led me to believe, and so maybe the commission needs to give
'Cause
you a final answer.
I know Paula couldn't make it because of traffic, but she's our designee on the committee, so.
Yes, yeah.
Just make sure she's in the loop so she can look out for it too when she's there. I know she did make the last meeting, so she's keeping up with it.
And then another item is the documents I sent you tonight show two drawings off of Scotland Street.
Mm-hmm.
They're highlighted in yellow, and they're basically the same drawing, but one's a broader view and then one's a closer up view, and it has 3 lots. And what they are on there for the purpose that they're on there is that the DEP has told the town that it can't withdraw any more water out of the ground than it's doing right now. And in order for the town to meet the needs of the residents, they need to draw more water from their wells. So in order to do that, the DEP says you have to provide some mitigation to allow us to let you draw some more water out of the ground, more water than you are. So they need land that's dedicated conservation land that will not be developed for any municipal purpose. And they needed a certain amount, and I believe it was around 18 acres. And the 3 parcels that I show you on that drawing amount to that amount, and doesn't require a survey plan or anything because they're described in a deed that was given to us by Phil Anderson and his relatives as a gift to the Conservation Commission. And so it didn't necessitate having a survey plan drawn up or any additional deed work done. And so I thought that that would be a good way to show the Mass DEP that we're going to provide that as mitigation land in perpetuity so that the town can draw some more water instead of being held to what we're doing right now. And one of the benefits of acquiring open space, oftentimes we get asked, why do we need open space in town? And there's a number of reasons, and this is probably a prime reason to have it, is that as the town does need more water to satisfy the demands of our residents, we may have to do this again in the future, and we may now have to come a little bit closer to Scotland Street, or as you look at that drawing, more to the west of those drawings, and actually have a survey plan drawn up, because we don't want to give them the whole 140-something acres that we have out there at one time, because then we can't do anything with the land, and we might want to do something conservation-wise, but we might want to be able to do something on some of that remaining land and not have it tied up as no touch or whatever the DEP will require. So we can add on to this later on if the town needs more, but that's a good reason for having open space land, that we can offer these things to the water department when they need to show mitigation. And what that's for is to provide more recharge into the ground by never making it impervious.
Okay, but it's not near a wellhead or anything then?
No, but it's in the
aquifer
area.
the
so-
basin that they.
Shows you
That
how
they use.
town is growing.
Well, it's funny John brought this up because I'm having to deal with DEP at work for our withdrawal permits for our wells, and thankfully we're not looking to go over the threshold that is established, so we don't have to do the mitigation. But they said municipalities, and then John told me about what we're doing, are the ones that are having the biggest trouble because
No
they're
space.
well, they also don't have the land to do the mitigation.
Yes.
So they're having a real hard time coming up with the demand that they have to supply for the amount of water.
Interesting, isn't it?
And
Well, what happens if they don't have the
then
mitigation for it?
you're not going to allow you to.
Wow.
So
So
it would be water bans.
Yeah, for
No more
outside.
hookups. I
Yeah.
mean,
So even as the town grows with
you're
people,
limited.
everything, geez.
Yeah.
So basically, you could start as a water ban all through the summertime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thankfully, we have this open space, and they do have rules, like we couldn't use land that we acquired back in the 70s. It had to be within the last 5 years. So thankfully, we had that land fairly recently, and we were able to use that. So
It's probably nothing we do with it anyway,
No.
right?
You
Yeah.
can't do anything with it, no.
But at least we got it.
Right.
but they will take it as mitigation land, so, and it didn't require drawing up engineering plans, so I thought it would be the best way to handle it. So I mentioned it to the town administrator, and then he referred my comments to Wayne, and apparently that paperwork's coming, and they'll be probably talking about tomorrow night at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, but they do need the agreement and the concurrence of the Conservation Commission, so I provided
So
Tim
I
with
will
a,
read the proposed
Okay.
motion to approve assigning conservation lands map 66 lot 1, map 59 lot 13, and map 59 lot 14 into the Mass DEP Water Management Plan mitigating withdrawals on behalf of the West Bridgewater Water Department in perpetuity.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and said, all's in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And we'll give John that, so he's got it
thank you.
on the record. And anything else on your end? Because I think we just have
So a signature for the ORAD
signature for the ORAD.
on West Street. And while you're doing that, I did get to the MAC conference this last Saturday.
Oh, did you? How was it?
It was well-attended by hundreds of people, it seems like, and The different workshops were excellent. I did one on farming in wetlands and the exemptions that they have. The other one was on climate change. Another one was on using green infrastructure so that rather than having everything paved, you should have some green infrastructure for your drainage basins within the parking lot to take away the stormwater. And I think the last one was, can't remember at this point, but there were four
They
of
were
them.
really up-to-date things. And,
Yeah, all very appropriate type subject matter.
Excellent. Plus you get to share ideas with other
Yep.
agents.
And the only other thing we have to sign is the request for surety release for the
That was
Pleasant Street.
That was approved at the last meeting, except for the paperwork really wasn't in order for, in the proper order or format that the accounts payable person wanted. So she asked to have some additional documentation, and so Kitty's put that all together and
copy it.
recommends that you all sign it instead of just having the town treasurer sign.
And I think that was it. Anybody have anything else? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
We'll make the motion.
Second that.
Second, all in favor? So moved.